It's very rare that I get to address a captive audience about the moon. I was just curious before this kicks off. Anyone remember the rover that China landed on the moon? They're like the second or third country to ever do that, and they found that big rectangular rock. I was seeing online more recently on one of these websites. They think that they have found it's not a rock; it's the stage where we faked the moon landing, right there on the moon. All right, on to more serious things. I am the emergency manager. I have spent, yes, 5 years in state emergency management. I worked at TDM before coming to the city of Kyle. I was the technological hazards specialist and then interim supervisor. That deals mostly with hazardous materials and how communities and local governments can plan for the release of same. Before that, I worked in local regional planning, I worked in operations, and then before that, I worked in nonprofit emergency management with the Red Cross. I started out as a police officer in the city of Dallas, so it's been a varied career to get to this point. Presently, I'm the emergency manager. What that means is I do things like help departments make sure that they do their fire drills, to make sure that they understand, fire drills is something we've all done since we were kids, but what are we testing when we do that? This is the evacuation process for staff in a given facility. How quickly can they do it? How do they maintain accountability? Stuff on the back end that, when we were 3 and 4 doing this in our schools, you're not really thinking about. All I know is I follow teacher outside and then they let us back in at some point. That's more or less what I do. Some terms of art. Emergency management, what is that? When people think of emergencies, they think 911, they think fire, rescue, EMS, police. This is what we call crisis management. There's an incident happening and I need people who are trained and equipped to come and deal with it. This building catches on fire. I'm not going to help you too much unless you point me to a fire extinguisher. It's the fire department that's going to come with specialized equipment to help put that fire out and try to save as much of the building as possible. Emergency management is a whole community approach towards consequence management. The crisis is important, yes. The aftermath in our field is equally important. After the fire trucks leave, when we get to that recovery process and then the mitigation process where we try to plan for future events and mitigate those impacts. Preparedness, where we're preparing for incidents before they happen. Incidentally, what we're doing here, this is an incidence of community preparedness. We have all gotten together to discuss an event that we thankfully have a lot of foresight on. I don't know who plans eclipses. I've never met that person, but we have lots of lead time on this. Business continuity. There is no private sector equivalent for what I do. The closest is business continuity. Whereas back during the civil defense days, my position would be something like continuity of government. The job would be, if we lose City Hall, how do we make sure the essential functions that are there carry over? In the private sector, you have a similar thing, whether you hire someone for that or not. Maybe you do it in the back of your mind. If I were to lose my storefront, how do we maintain essential functions to keep this business operational so that we don't go under? If we lose set number of staffing, if the receptionist calls in sick, what's the backup plan? You do this, whether consciously or subconsciously, through adequate staffing, planning for adverse events, icy weather. We just had that. While not a lot of ice formed on the roads here in Kyle, I am sure that everybody at some point thought of, well, if it's too icy to get to where I need to go to make sure that my business is open for today, what do? Sometimes it's just close. Safety for the staff is better than 1 day of operation. Sometimes that's not the case, and so you make your plans. Do I have layover staffing? Do they just stay an extra shift from the previous shift? Things like that. Continuity of operations, identical. This is just the summation of both. How do we make sure that the essential functions that we have to perform for the citizenry or have to perform for a sense of fiscal responsibility continue? Skeleton days. My recommendation to the city has been, we're going to reduce staffing on the day of the eclipse. A skeleton day just means we have the minimum staffing required to maintain our essential functions, as we're tying into the previous terms. And my recommendation to you all for that day, depending on what your industry is and how you can support that, having fewer vehicles transitioning to work in the midst of a giant traffic incident, which is what this eclipse is going to be, will help that traffic incident. The fewer people on the roads, the fewer people get flat tires, the fewer people run out of gas, the fewer incidents we have overall, the smoother things will be. So on the city side, and you'll see on the recommendations for this, what the city is planning on doing, we are going to try and reduce the number of people we have on the roads. What I'm going to be requesting from everyone here, and this is only a request, try to do the same. Whether you have just-in-time shipping coming in on that Monday, April the 8th is a Monday, maybe schedule that for Tuesday afterwards or Wednesday or the week before, the previous Friday or Saturday, depending on how that works. Just-in-time shipments. That is actually not a term of art in my field. That's just something I learned when I was very young working at Target in the back room, stocking everything. The idea that stores just have all this stuff sitting in the back and just waiting to be put out on the shelves is an antiquated notion. That's back when you could get a shipment maybe once a month because they were drawn by horses. Now you are looking at maybe 24 hours to 72 hours lead time. Your stuff is here and it's probably going to be sold before the next shipment shows up 3 days later. At least that's the way it was in Target and the big box retailers that I worked at when I was a very young man, first starting out. Cascading effects. That one, more or less what the tin says. The incident is not really what I'm concerned about. Every so often the sun moves in front of the earth or the earth moves in front of the sun. I'm sorry, the moon moves in front of the sun, not the sun relative to us does not move. I want to make that clear. But every now and then the moon and the earth get in between the sun and each other. That's not really what I'm concerned about. Eldritch beings are not going to come from the sky because we can't see the sun for a few minutes. It is the cascading effects of that. If you have a bunch of tourists who come here on roads that are not prepared to not equipped to deal with that level of traffic, you will have people pulling off. Well, what's a cascading effect of that? We live in very dry Texas country. We saw in Tennessee in 2017, people pulling off to the road to try and wait out traffic or for any similar reasons. We're starting off small fires. The catalytic converter underneath the car can get to, I'm told, like 600-700 degrees, and that's more than enough to catch dry grass. We're probably going to see the same thing here. The city is taking steps to address all of our right-of-ways, and that's something that I would like to extend to the community at large. Those areas where perhaps it's not traditionally where people park, but when the entire road is backed up all the way to 35, someone may want to pull off just to go use the restroom somewhere. We don't want wildfires spreading from that singular event. That is an incidence of a cascading effect, all because of the moon, right? So preparedness is what we're doing. Planning is what we're doing. Planning is a key facet of preparedness along with organization, exercise, training, and evaluation, what we call the POETI cycle in emergency management. That's something that I would like to impart onto this group. We have plans in place. A number of you, just mathematically, a number of you are veterans, and you know intrinsically that plans rarely survive encounter with the enemy. In emergency management, the enemy is just reality. It's whatever happens versus whatever we plan to have happen. We need to be able to adapt. And to do that, you need to know, what are my resources? What's the environment looking like? Am I trained to use these resources in either the manner they're intended or in an off-intended manner, what we call off-label use? Can you guys say the same? Do you practice this? Businesses do have evacuation signs. I've seen them. Do they practice evacuating the building? Does the staff actually know how to leave, how to account for each other, and then how to get emergency services on the scene? That's all part of the same planning cycle, the same preparedness cycle. Assets are just that, assets. The PIO, we are not joined by Rachel. We are joined by Allison, her deputy. She's the city's PIO, the Public Information Officer. This could be the head of your communications. This is your lifeline to the public. This is how they get information from you, and sometimes how you get information from them. And then interdependencies. You remember cascading cycles? All of these things touch each other in one way or another. Losing one can mean either losing another or just having it impact in an adverse way. You can go to the FEMA website if you want to see like all of the critical infrastructure areas. But the loss of one, transportation, say, if I lose access to roads, what does that do to banking? What does that do to shipping? What does that do to everything that needs transportation to function? Just show of hands, if the roads are inaccessible and Jesse here just immediately has a stroke, how does the ambulance get here to deal with him? Now it's a health issue. How does the hospital? Sorry, I didn't mean to pick on you. You're just in the front row. I had nothing to do with it. That's all I can say. It went from a transportation issue to an emergency medical issue, now a health issue, because in all likelihood, he's not the only person in a city of 60,000 people to be having a medical event. This is now public health. And you just branch out in exactly the same way. And that is what emergency management coordinators are supposed to be thinking about. How does the loss of telecommunications affect the other critical infrastructure areas that we have? PD spends a lot of time thinking about, if we lose our radios, how do we make sure officers know about calls? How do they get to the calls? How do they resolve the calls and report that resolution? It's an ongoing issue for us, and I'm sure for you guys as well. Authorities. How many people are actually interested in the various authorities that allow me to say the things that I say in a reasonably confident manner? Because I can just skip the slide. The last one took a lot longer than I thought. All right. So what's going to happen? We're going to have an eclipse. Eclipses. I don't think I need to go into like what an eclipse is, why this one is different than October. Although I can, because I know we just had the annular eclipse. Annular, given the title, it happens fairly frequently. The total eclipse is a lot more. It's a lot. Well, it's more rare. I don't know if that's the appropriate language, but it's a lot less common than the annular eclipse. Totality means daytime turns into darkness. There is no light from the sun reaching that path for about 4 minutes, depending on where you are. It's going to happen on April 8th. You can see on the map there where we're expecting the path of totality to be. Kyle is literally just outside of it. We are in the 99 point, I think it's like 89 or 98% occlusion area. So we're not going to have complete darkness, but it's going to be pretty dang dark. It's going to be like a moonless night out there. The issue that we face, again, is not necessarily the darkness. There are things that happen, like wildlife that is not usually out during the day will try to come out because they don't know what eclipses are. They just know it's dark and I should be awake. Kind of like if somebody shines a bright light in your bedroom window in the middle of the night, you might wake up just wondering, like, is the sun out? Did I just sleep really badly? They'll be confused, but that's not going to affect us too much. You may see deer doing odd things. What's going to affect us is going to be all of the traffic. Oh, see, I knew I had a chart. So we are in the 99.8% occlusion rate. And then you have Wimberley and San Marcos there. So why are we concerned? Initially, I was not. I thought that it was very strange that I was being told that the county and the state were putting together planning teams for this eclipse. I was wondering, I've lived in Texas since 2005. I mean, I don't recall eclipses happening before, but I'm sure they have happened. And I don't remember, gibbous moons and whatever else they said would happen when you can't see the sun anymore. It is the traffic. In 2017, we have the after action reports from Tennessee, Oregon. Essentially, it is tourism. It is a mass of people. And between writing this and today, there was a website that was launched called the greatamericaneclipse.com, and they use some predictive modeling to try and guess at the number of people who are going to show up. I do know from the after action, Tennessee saw double the number of anticipated visitors. Oregon actually saw fewer than the number of anticipated visitors and still had to activate the National Guard to clear out, I believe it was Highway 71 north-south, just from the number of people who ran out of gas, got flat tires, just were stuck waiting on this highway trying to leave the area and preventing, because they're vehicles and they're made of solid matter, other vehicles can't go through them. They're blocking the road now. We're going to try and be preventing that because while they had Highway 71, you may note from your knowledge of local geography, we don't have an east-west highway running through Kyle. People are going to be going west, if you remember the map, to get to places like Wimberley, Dripping Springs, areas in the path of totality. And then immediately afterwards, like every single football game y'all have been to in a stadium, they're all going to leave at once, and they're all going to be going east. And I think we have exactly 2 roads here and maybe like 4 in San Marcos and 1 in Buda that actually go east-west. And none of them are multi-lane highways. This is going to be kind of unique because in the cities that were impacted in Tennessee and Oregon, in Texas, we are surrounded by 4 very large American cities. Oregon has Portland, they have a few others. Tennessee has Nashville. And this isn't just me making judgment on the size of their cities. This is what was in their after action reports. In Texas, we have to the east Houston, we have Austin immediately to the north, San Antonio to the south, further north is Dallas, and then out to the west is El Paso. These are large population centers that will be attracted to, or at least we assume will be attracted to, the path of totality. For El Paso, we're not too worried about that traffic because they're going to reach it before they reach us. Virtually everyone else will transition along 35 and then go west, putting Buda, ourselves, San Marcos, basically everyone who has an east-west access in the path of travel. That was Oregon traffic. This is for a 2-minute event. People really like to see eclipses. I personally do not understand the draw, but I appreciate that there are fandoms for, a lot of things. Astronomy, I guess, is one of them, and lunar astronomy it's a massive draw. I mean, you see this. What I'd like to avoid, though, are the large trucks. If we can, again, try to limit the number of shipments going in and out of the city on that day, that would be fantastic. I know TxDOT is looking at asking the governor to try and, this is all speculation of whether or not they do it. I just know that in a meeting, it was suggested that we can try to suspend shipping on that day for this purpose. I know the county is also trying to figure out how to ask their businesses, San Marcos, Buda as well. Again, this is for ours is going to be a 4-minute event. Theirs was 2. And that is just a park. People will camp out for this 2 or 3 minute event. I did read, and this is not part of the after action, this was just somebody's personal testimonial in Oregon when they went here. It was cloudy that day. But what are you going to do? You're already set up. A few, like 100 or 1,000, tried to climb nearby mountains to get above the clouds, and whether or not that was successful, I don't know. But this is a massive draw. People are interested, they are passionate, they want to be here. And because we live in 21st century, they're going to drive here. Very few people are going to come here on buses. Very few people are going to, I mean, nobody's going to walk here. That just doesn't work in the state. We don't have alternative means to get people to the Path of Denali, so they're going to drive. They're going to rent cars. I made the mistake of trying to rent a car for an unrelated trip before I remembered I need to be here for this event. And it was something like $300 and some odd a night from Enterprise to try and rent a car on April 9th. So that is what we're concerned about. It's just the mass of people. A mass of people on their own is not necessarily a bad thing, but with any large mass of people comes the usual things that they demand. They require infrastructure to support them. People require water. People will be stopping for food. They definitely need gas. They need a place to charge if they have a non-gas vehicle. It's not that dissimilar from day-to-day operations, except in scale. It's just going to be a lot more in a much compressed amount of time. Imagine instead if you had all of the demand in your business on one day instead of all year. We're looking at something like that. We are asking the communities, and I want to thank, again, the Kyle Chamber for sending their ambassadors out to talk to gas stations, to talk to grocers, to try and provide some information on what we're expecting. Because I imagine if we're at, I think the custom is like 30% headspace on gasoline on the storage containers underground underneath gas stations, we may want to look at 25 or whatever the minimum safety threshold is, because there's going to be a lot more people demanding that same amount of gas on that day. And then immediately after the event, as people try to leave. Same thing with grocers, same things with other businesses. Because there are going to be this many people here, we're looking at, as a government, skeleton staffing, the minimum level of staffing that we need to say that we're staying open without declaring just like a holiday and sending everyone home. I know the government surrounding us, Hays County, same thing, skeleton day. Buda, same thing. They're going to either close outright or announce a skeleton day. San Marcos is going to minimum staffing. All pending votes or whatever else. This is just from the emergency managers that I'm speaking to. Whether or not their city management needs to vote on this or their councils need to vote on this, that their process is their own. But the recommendations that we have all put forth is, we want to get as many cars off the road as possible because there's going to be a lot more cars coming from outside than we're used to. We're looking at pre-positioning assets. I don't know that anyone from Kyle Fire is here. So police, they usually stage out, they're out patrolling. Fire usually stays at a station. For this event, because it's going to be a bear getting a fire truck to places that they need to go, they're just going to be staging in the field. It's not a common occurrence for fire departments to do that. We're going to be looking at staging, same thing. For us, it's ESD9, the EMS service. They're going to be staging out in the field rather than waiting for calls and then trying to drive out to them. We're looking at fuel provision. The city has explored contracts with emergency fuel vendors. I know the state has actually secured contracts with emergency fuel vendors to try and support emergency operations during this event in case there's just too many cars and not enough gas stations and we can't refuel our stuff. We're looking at figuring out I said earlier, how does the PD operate without radio? In Oregon, they did see cellular service just stop. There were way too many cell phones for the towers that they had, and so cell service just did not work. We are working with Hays County to ensure that we have backup communications in place. So I've been working, and I want to thank the Hays Caldwell Amateur Radio Group for assisting the city of Kyle and San Marcos and Buda and Hays County in setting up a backup ham network, because we are very concerned. If cells go down, how do people contact us if they need help? Do we go back to the radios if we have to? Do you reach out to your local fire station, to your local hospital? How many of y'all know that Ascension has a ham radio station in one of their towers? Yeah, well, it turns out they do. Surprise. Same thing with Christus in San Marcos. Same thing with Christus in New Braunfels. A lot of these facilities, whether by regulation or it's just a really good idea, have to have a backup means of communication because cell service it can be fickle, it can be overwhelmed. Same thing, you lose power widespread. I don't know how exactly we would lose power in a widespread manner due to an event involving a lot of traffic, but we should probably prepare for that just in case. People drive off the road, hit a transformer, neighborhoods without lights, things like that. So this is what the governments are planning to do. Oh, I did have some stuff from the state. TDEM is the agency responsible for overall coordination of our responses to this event. Now, that doesn't mean they come and regulate, what I'm doing for the city of Kyle. They don't come and regulate what the city is doing for its own citizens. It means that they are leading the state office's efforts. So they are in charge of a group consisting of TxDOT, Health and Human Services, all that, to put together a broad plan for the state. CapCog is serving as a coordinating body and communications fallback. If we do lose our radio towers for whatever reason, we can fall back to 911 through CapCog's 911 center. County offices are focused on the area of totality, which we are not in. So I don't want to say they're leaving us out dry. They are helping us a lot. However, the predominant number of forces are being focused on the west side of the county, not the east side. So we, as the cities here, are taking the lead on what we're planning to do. What we're telling the public, 5-gallon bucket of patience. I like that phrase. I saw it from one of your documents or something, but it may have come from the chamber. That's a good phrase. A 5-gallon bucket of patience will be necessary. If you do not have to go out on this day, I don't recommend you try. If you can reschedule your doctor appointment, great, because you're probably going to be late for it, and it's possible your doctor will be late for it, because everyone has the same commute issues. There's going to be a lot of people, and as I said before, with a lot of people come a lot of demands on the infrastructure that we have in place. Whether that's a demand for, I need to stop somewhere and get gasoline, I need to stop somewhere, use the restroom, I need to get something to eat. I have worked in retail, I've worked, on non-public sector jobs. It can be frustrating to deal with just endless customers for your entire shift, but that's what we have. We have a lot of people coming here to see this astrological event or astronomical event, and they're just people from out of town like anyone else. There just happen to be more of them this day than we're used to. Keeping off the grass. Texas, as I said, is prone to drought. I don't really want fires kicking off, especially when my fire department is widespread and we cannot bring all of our resources to one fire outbreak to try and overwhelm it in the early stages. So that's something that I would like to communicate to everybody, and not just you guys, but literally everybody in the city. It's on our website. It's going to be we're going to have an Eclipse page, as I understand it. It's going to be on there. It's going to be on social media. And if I can, I'm going to send that to everybody's cell phones. Just don't park on the grass. This was an issue in Oregon. Legitimate Eclipse glasses. There are Eclipse glasses. This is a thing. And in Oregon, they had a problem, at least from what I read, with illegitimate Eclipse glasses that did not serve their function. So their ER had a bunch of people coming in with damage to their eyes from looking at the sun. It is generally not advisable to look at the sun without protective equipment. It is also advisable that you verify that your protective equipment comes from a reputable vendor. Right below it, do not look directly into the sun. Do not block roadways. I appreciate that your car may break down. We will have PD out there. I have been working with both the sheriff's office and our PD. We've been working with the various wrecker services in and around Kyle to try and make sure that they have assets spread out through the area to be able to move vehicles off the roads as needed. However, that can, even if they're a mile away, that can still take 30, 40 minutes to get to you. So the best plan is to prepare. Make sure you're full of gas, make sure you've done your regular maintenance. Try not to, if you don't even have to go out, don't go out. I guarantee you cannot break down on the highway if you just don't leave your house. Break down in your garage, that's not an issue. I have no issues with that. Don't park on shoulders for the same reason. We're going to be trying to reserve some lanes of traffic for emergency vehicles. Whether or not we're successful in that remains to be seen. Refer to what I said before about plans meeting the enemy. But these shoulders are a key part, and I've been working with our traffic engineer on this to try and get police vehicles, emergency medical vehicles, possibly fire vehicles, although they are very large and our shoulders are not that big, where they need to go in an emergency. Because while the Eclipse is fun, while it's nice that we have all these visitors, somebody who is actively having a heart attack is not really going to appreciate that when they need an ambulance to get to them now and they're still stuck in traffic. Ensure your needs are met at home. If you can prepare yourself to the point that you don't need to go out in this, traffic nightmare, then you're in the best place you can be. Because I promise there's not going to be traffic in your living room. Nobody's going to drive there for the Eclipse. But our communications office is coordinating our messaging to the public. We will have pages out. We have social media out. I would encourage you guys, if you want to share the same with your employees or visitors, you can print out whatever we put out and share that with whoever you like. Business messaging. There's going to be a lot of traffic. You may notice a theme in this statement. We're expecting a lot of people. I mentioned that website before. So my guess from the Texas Department of Transportation and CATRAC, which is the Capital Area Trauma Regional Advisory Commission, was somewhere between 200,000 and 1 million visitors. They're using some sort of algorithmic predictive modeling, and I'm sure on the website they tell you how they do it. They're predicting a little more, between 220 and 100, or 1,200,000 and something. That's the range that they're expecting to come visit our area. So a lot of traffic. Staff will be impacted. People may be late. People probably will be late unless they get there very early. You'll have customers coming in and out. You may have an inadequate amount of parking. Explore the possibility of skeleton staffing. I've mentioned this before. We're just trying to reduce the transportation burden on our infrastructure. Just-in-time shipments, if we can move those to other days, that would be ideal, because trucks take up a lot of space on the road. They put a lot of, I don't know if they are naturally slower or if that's just how they drive because of the size of the vehicles, but they do seem to slow things down. And especially in stop-and-go traffic, those giant diesel engines, I don't know if they're built for that. Reschedule trucking more generally. Explore increased fuel capacity at gas stations. I had mentioned before there is usually a headspace reserved in the underground fuel storage tanks. Does anyone here actually work at a gas station that can explain that more fully? No. I will continue with my assumption then that there is this headspace reserved. If we can maximize the amount of fuel stored, that is ideal because there's going to be a lot of people looking for it. Expect additional people. That makes sense. They may not all be customers. We tried early on to reserve porta potties so that people could go and use the restroom in the community. They have been booked out apparently since like last September. There are none left from TDS. You are welcome to go and try and book some. So people may just come in looking for a place to use the restroom. We do not want to encourage any sort of illegal dumping from RVs or just going off in the woods to the extent that we can. However, this many people with the number of facilities we have, it's going to be a tight fit. It's going to be a squeeze. We do ask that illegal dumping is reported to law enforcement. Communications failure. So we do have infrastructure in place to provide backup communications. We are working with ways to get messaging out to the public if need be. We have ways to coordinate with emergency crews, whether they're EMS, fire, or police. If cell networks go down, my question to this group is, how do you get in touch with your staff? If Mary Jo, just to pull a name out of a hat, does not show up for a shift, do you check on that? How do you reach out to them if cell networks are down? How do they reach out to you to notify you they're going to be late? How do you get in touch with each other? Do you have to? Perhaps there's a way that you can set something up the day before. Be prepared to handle cash transactions. If the cell network goes down, as I'm given to understand, the card readers may not function as intended. You may transition to a non-electronic form of payment. And then hand-operated credit card readers. I have not seen one of those in at least 12 years, but if they still exist, this may be a time to dust them off and figure out how to make them work. Resources. When I said I'd like you all to report illegal dumping because that is a major issue, that's a huge public health issue. These are good numbers to report that to. I have Kyle PD and I have Hays County Sheriff's Office non-emergency numbers. The more information about whatever happened there, the better they'll be able to resolve the issue. More information can be found at our website. We're going to have an Eclipse site up if it's not up already. And I did have there it is, greatamericaneclipse.com. Now, I'm sure this was very thrilling. There's very little discussion of the moon. Does anyone have questions, comments, or concerns? The question is Hays CISD is still showing open for that day on their calendar. Is that still in effect? To my knowledge, yes. I've spoken with Jerry Scrocky, the Director of Safety and Security for the school district. They will remain open that day. I can say that our surrounding districts, San Marcos, Dripping Springs, Wimberley, they have all opted to close, so that may change. I don't know if Hays CISD will follow suit.
Thank you, Will. Great information. And by the way, we have a few glasses here. I will give a plug to one of our members, Lionheart Hobby. They are stocking them, and I don't know exactly. I think there's a safety reading on the inside here, so you can check to see if they are what you're supposed to use. Is there a way? What are you looking for on your glasses? Do you know, Will?
Yes. Okay, so if you're trying to get Eclipse glasses, there is a list of vendors that are just recognized by NASA. Pulling directly from them is usually a safe bet. On the glasses that you purchase from anyone else, there should be an ANSI or an ISTI rating. Here we go, ISO rating. Right there, yep. So it's in accordance with ISO 12312-2. I want to thank you guys for coming, letting me speak in front of you. Jesse is smiling, so I guess I did a good job, and I hope you all have a pleasant day.